Nobody knew his name. Nobody knew where he came from. But there he was, face down by the riverbank, barely breathing, a body that didn't belong to the village. Every dawn at Umunne village, women and girls would walk its narrow dusty paths to fetch water before the sun grew hot. Amara was one of them. She was 19, with deep brown skin kissed by the sun and eyes that sparkled like morning dew. Her hair was tied back with a faded yellow scarf, and her simple blue dress clung to her slim figure. She was known in the village for her gentle ways and a smile that could soften even the oldest hearts. That morning, she walked with a steady rhythm, balancing the empty clay pot on her head, listening to the birds and the sound of leaves. It was peaceful, until she reached the water. The first thing she noticed was the foot. It stuck out slightly from the tall grass by the riverbank, pale against the earth. Amara froze. For a moment, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. But as she stepped closer, the shape of a man became clear, a man lying face down, half in the mud, his clothes torn and soaked, his skin ghostly white. She dropped her pot with a loud thud. "Hello," she called, her voice trembling. "Can you hear me?" No response. Her heart pounded as she knelt beside him. He wasn't from the village, that much was certain. His clothes, though wet and dirty, looked expensive. His watch, still strapped to his wrist, shimmered faintly in the light. His face was bruised, his lips slightly parted. But he was breathing, just barely. Amara looked around. There was no one else in sight. She knew she had to act quickly. She grabbed his arm and tried to pull him up, but he was too heavy. Gasping, she ran back toward the path, her legs trembling. "Help! Somebody help me!" she shouted, her voice cracking the morning silence. An old farmer, Pa John, was leading his goats not far off. Hearing her cries, he rushed toward her. Together, they returned to the riverbank. The man hadn't moved. "Who is he?" Pa John muttered, inspecting the stranger's torn clothes and blood-streaked face. "I don't know," Amara said. "But he's alive. We have to take him home." Pa John scratched his head, then nodded. "Let's lift him." It took effort, but they managed to carry him to Amara's small mud house at the edge of the village. Her mother, Mama Ngozi, gasped when she saw the man. "Jesus," she exclaimed. "What happened to him?" Amara quickly explained, and Mama Ngozi sprang into action, boiling water, mixing herbs, and cleaning the man's wounds. Amara brought out an old mattress and laid it on the floor. Gently, they placed the man down, covering him with a wrapper. For hours, he didn't stir. Amara sat by his side, watching his chest rise and fall. Something about him puzzled her. His hands were clean, his fingernails trimmed. The watch on his wrist had tiny expensive stones around the face. Who was he? How had he ended up by their river, battered, half dead? By late afternoon, the village was buzzing. Word had spread fast, a stranger had been found at the river. Some said he was a spy. Others whispered he was a criminal on the run. But Amara didn't listen to them. She kept watching him. That evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, the man stirred. His fingers moved. Then his eyes fluttered open. Amara gasped and leaned closer. "Hey, can you hear me?" she asked softly. His eyes, dark and confused, slowly focused on her face. He tried to speak but only managed a whisper. "Water," he croaked. She rushed to bring him a cup. He sipped slowly, then coughed. His body was weak, but he was alive. "Truly alive." "You're safe now," she said. "You're in Umunne. I found you by the river." He blinked, struggling to understand. Then, after a long pause, he said, "Where am I?" "In my home," Amara replied. "We're taking care of you." He looked around the room, taking in the mud walls, the oil lamp, the wooden table with herbs laid out. He looked at Amara again. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Amara." There was a silence. His eyes closed again, as if the weight of speaking had drained him. Mama Ngozi entered and checked on him, nodding approvingly. "He needs rest. His body is weak, but he'll recover." That night, Amara sat outside under the stars, unable to sleep. Her thoughts raced. Who was this man? What storm had thrown him into their quiet world? And why did her heart beat faster every time she looked at him? She had no answers. Only questions. He woke up fully the next morning, the sun gently streaming through the tiny window of the mud house. His body ached, but his eyes were clearer now. The last thing he remembered was the sharp pain in his chest, the cold water swallowing him whole, and then, nothing now, he was lying on a soft mat, covered with a thin cloth that smelled faintly of smoke and herbs. The room was small but tidy, with neatly folded clothes stacked in a corner and a cooking pot by the hearth. A faint hum floated in from outside, a woman's voice, singing softly. The door creaked open, and Amara stepped in. She was carrying a wooden bowl of hot pepper soup. The smell hit him first, spicy, rich, and unfamiliar. She paused when their eyes met. "You're awake," she said softly, setting the bowl down beside him. "You slept all through yesterday. Mama thought you wouldn't make it." He struggled to sit up, but she gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Easy. Your body needs to heal." He gave a weak nod and looked at her for a long moment. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rough, like sandpaper. "You're welcome, stranger," she replied with a small smile. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Just call me Daniel." "Daniel," she repeated thoughtfully. "I'm Amara. And this is my mother's house." Daniel glanced around again. It wasn't a place he would ever have imagined himself in, not in 1,000 years. The furniture was handmade, the walls smeared with red earth, and there was no electricity, just firelight and moonlight. It was far from the glass towers and marble floors he was used to, but there was something peaceful about it all. Simple. Honest. "What happened to you?" Amara asked gently. Daniel sighed and looked at her. "Family issues. My stepbrother wants me dead." He said with a faint smile. Amara gasped. "What happened?" She quizzes, still staring at him. "They want the properties that my father willed to me, being the first son." He said. "You're from the city?" Amara asked again, and Daniel slowly nodded. "Wait, so he pushed you in the river?" "If I guessed right?" asked Amara, curiously, and Daniel nodded again, carrying the plate of pepper soup. In the days that followed, Daniel and Amara began to talk more. At first, only short exchanges. "How are you feeling today? Or do you need more water?" But soon, they were laughing together. He told her simple, vague stories about his past travels, careful never to mention who he really was. Daniel Ease, billionaire CEO of Zephyr Group, one of the richest men in Africa. He didn't know why he kept it a secret. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was the relief of being treated like a person and not a brand. Or maybe it was her eyes, curious, trusting, untainted by the greed and scheming he had grown used to. But not everyone in the village shared Amara's warmth. Chuka, Amara's fiancé, was a tall, proud man with arms like logs and a voice that always sounded like a warning. He had been away in the next village when Daniel was found, but when he returned and saw a strange man eating at Amara's table, resting in her home, laughing with her in the evenings, something in him snapped. "Who is he to you?" he asked her one night, gripping her wrist harder than he meant to. Amara pulled away. "He is a sick man I helped. That's all." Chuka's jaw tightened. "The whole village is talking. You sit by his bed. You walk with him. You smile too much when you look at him." "I was only being kind," she whispered. "Kindness has a limit, Amara," Chuka snapped. "Don't forget we are to be married." The fights became frequent. Amara didn't like the way Chuka looked at Daniel, like he was prey. And Daniel, though he said nothing, could feel the weight of Chuka's glares every time he stepped outside. One evening, after yet another argument with Chuka, Amara sat outside the hut, her head heavy with confusion. The stars twinkled above, and crickets chirped in the grass. Daniel sat beside her. "You're troubled," he said. She didn't answer immediately. Then, in a low voice, she said, "I think you should go." He looked at her, surprised. "My presence is causing problems?" She nodded slowly. "Chuka, the village, they don't understand." "I don't even understand." Daniel took a deep breath. "You've done more for me than anyone ever has. I won't make things harder for you." Amara's eyes shimmered with sadness. "I just wish we lived in a world where kindness wasn't misunderstood." The next morning, Daniel packed the little he had, mostly things Amara had given him: a clean shirt, some ground nuts, a small calabash of water. He stood before Amara and her mother, bowed slightly, and smiled. "Thank you for saving my life." Amara's mother wiped her eyes with the edge of her wrapper. "Go well, my son. May the gods guide your steps." Amara avoided his gaze, afraid that if she looked at him, she'd beg him to stay. And then he was gone, walking down the narrow path that led out of Umunne, his footsteps quiet, his figure slowly swallowed by the trees. But what no one knew, what not even Daniel himself knew, was that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Days had passed since Daniel left the village. Amara hadn't been herself. She moved about the house like a shadow, doing her chores in silence, speaking only when spoken to. Her mother, Maman Ngozi, watched her with quiet concern, but she said nothing. She knew that whatever storm raged inside her daughter's heart, it would have to calm on its own. Amara missed Daniel more than she was willing to admit. She had grown used to his quiet laughter, his gentle hands, and the way he looked at her like she was more than just a village girl. And though she tried to act normal, everything around her reminded her of him. The bench where they used to sit. The path they walked together. The soft way he used to call her name Amara, but Daniel was gone now. And she had to return to her reality. She was still engaged to Chuka. Chuka had not changed. In fact, he had grown more restless since Daniel left. His jealousy had turned into pride. He walked around the village like someone who had finally won a battle. He expected Amara to fall back into place, to act like nothing had happened. He sent her messages through his cousin. He told people in the market that the wedding would go on as planned, but Amara had become distant. She didn't visit Chuka's compound. She didn't reply to his greetings. Her heart was confused. Torn between the memory of Daniel and the weight of her promise to Chuka. One hot afternoon, after a long morning helping Maman Ngozi at the farm, Amara sat under the mango tree behind their house, alone. She needed answers. She needed peace. She needed to know if she was truly meant to be with Chuka. After some time, she stood up, brushed the dust off her wrapper, and began to walk, slowly, uncertainly, towards Chuka's house. Her heart pounded with every step. Maybe we can talk, she thought. Maybe if I explain how I feel, he'll understand. Maybe we can start again. She reached the compound. The gate was slightly open. A strange silence filled the air. She pushed the gate wider and walked in. Chuka, she called, her voice soft. No answer. She reached the door of his hut. It was half shut, but not locked. Something told her to turn back. But she didn't. She pushed the door slowly and stepped inside. What she saw next would never leave her mind. Chuka was lying on the bed, but he wasn't alone. A young woman, barely out of her teenage years, was beside him. They were tangled in the same cloth. Their clothes were scattered across the floor, careless, shameless. Amara stood there, frozen, unable to speak. For a moment, no one moved. Then Chuka's eyes opened. He looked straight at her. His face twisted in shock, then fear, then something cold and dangerous, defiance. The girl beside him gasped and reached for her wrapper. Amara's lips parted. Chuka! He jumped up from the bed, pulling on his trousers. Amara, what are you doing here? Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't blink. I came to talk. I wanted to speak to you. I thought. Chuka waved his hand. Stop. Let's not act like this is the end of the world. Amara's voice cracked. You're sleeping with another woman, Chuka. He walked toward her, chest out, eyes hard. And so? What about you? You think I didn't hear what people said? You and that stranger. Daniel. Whispering to each other. Taking evening walks. Laughing like lovebirds. Amara's voice rose. He was injured. He was a stranger who needed help. Chuka scoffed. And yet, you cried when he left. You think I didn't notice? Amara stepped back, heart racing. So this is revenge? He threw his hands up. Call it whatever you want. The point is, it happened. You saw it. Now let's move on. She blinked. Move on? Yes, Chuka said. Let's forget today ever happened. I'll marry you as planned. You'll become my wife. And we'll both pretend nothing happened between you and that stranger, and nothing happened between me and. He glanced back at the girl, whoever she is. Amara stared at him, mouth open in disbelief. You're not sorry, she asked. Chuka shrugged. Why should I be? You and I both did wrong. Let's just call it even. Something inside Amara broke. She turned and stormed out of the house, her heart pounding, her breath short. The road back home felt endless. Her legs shook. Her eyes burned with tears she had been holding for too long. She didn't greet anyone on the way. She didn't speak to her mother when she entered the house. She went straight to her room, locked the door, and let the tears fall. For the next 3 days, Amara didn't say a word to anyone. She didn't eat, she didn't sleep, she didn't go to the river, or the market, or the farm. Mama Ngozi knocked on her door, softly calling her name. Amara, my child. Please talk to me. But Amara didn't answer. The pain was too much. The shame. The betrayal. The memories of Daniel's kind eyes, and Chuka's cold ones. She buried her face in her pillow and cried again and again until her tears ran dry. But even in her silence, one thing was clear: something inside Amara had changed forever. It had been almost 2 weeks since Daniel left the village. Life in Umunne had returned to normal, but for Amara, nothing was the same. She hardly smiled. She barely ate. Her mother, Mama Ngozi, did her best to comfort her, but Amara had closed herself off from everyone. After what happened with Chuka, and the pain of watching Daniel leave without saying who he really was, Amara felt like her heart had been torn into two. She would sit alone by the mango tree, staring at the path that led into the village. Every time she heard the sound of a car or footsteps, her heart would race, hoping it was Daniel coming back. But he never came until one sunny afternoon that day. The sun was high in the sky. The birds were singing, and everything looked peaceful. Mama Ngozi was inside, pounding yam for lunch. Amara sat quietly outside, peeling cassava, her thoughts far away. Then she heard it. A loud sound. Engines. Not just one, but 3 cars, big, shiny, expensive cars, coming down the narrow dusty road into the village. Children ran out of their homes to look. Women peeked from their windows. The whole village stood still. Nobody in Umunne owned cars like that. The cars came to a stop right in front of Amara's house. Amara froze. Mama Ngozi came rushing outside, wiping her hands on her wrapper. What is happening? Who are these people? The doors opened. Out stepped 3 men in fine suits. One of them stood taller than the others. His suit was white, his shoes shining like glass. He wore a gold wristwatch and dark sunglasses. Then, he took the glasses off. Amara gasped. Mama, she whispered. It's him. It's Daniel. Her basket dropped to the ground as she ran forward. Mama Ngozi stood frozen in shock, her mouth wide open. Daniel opened his arms, smiling wide. Amara flew into his embrace. They held each other tight, both of them crying softly. You came back, she said. I told you I would, he replied, brushing tears from her cheek. Mama Ngozi came closer, still unsure. Daniel. This is you. Daniel nodded, his voice calm and full of warmth. Yes, Mama. My full name is Daniel Obianuju Okeke. And there's something I must tell you both. They all went inside. Daniel sat with them and shared his story. I didn't fall into the river by accident, he began. My younger brother tried to kill me because of my father's will. Amara and her mother stared in shock. My father was a rich man in the city. Before he died, he gave everything to me, his houses, lands, cars, and company. But my brother didn't accept it. He wanted it all for himself. That night, while I was traveling by boat, he arranged for me to be attacked. I was thrown into the river, left to die. Amara held his hand tightly. I survived. And the river brought me to you, he said, looking at her with love. You saved me, Amara. You and your mother gave me life again. I will never forget that. Mama Ngozi's eyes were filled with tears. My son, we only did what was right. God brought you here. Daniel smiled. Now I'm back, and I've taken everything that belongs to me. My brother is in prison. Justice has been served. He opened one of the boxes his men brought. Inside were gifts, clothes, jewelry, shoes, and money. He brought out another. Inside was a brand new phone for Mama Ngozi, and a gold necklace for Amara. I came to take my wife, Daniel said, standing up and facing Amara. Will you marry me, Amara? Will you leave this place with me and live the life you deserve? Amara couldn't speak. Tears flowed freely. Her heart was full. Yes, she said softly, then louder. Yes, Daniel. I will marry you. The whole village soon heard the news. Some were shocked. Some were jealous. But many were happy for Amara. The wedding was simple but beautiful. Daniel invited his trusted friends from the city. Mama Ngozi wore the finest wrapper she had ever owned. Amara was dressed in white and gold, with beads in her hair and love in her heart. After the wedding, Daniel took Amara and her mother to the city. Their house wasn't just a house, it was a mansion, big and shining like something out of a dream. There were 10 bedrooms, a swimming pool, gardens, and even maids who called Amara Madam. She couldn't believe it. She walked through the mansion in awe. Marble floors, golden chandeliers, a kitchen bigger than her entire village hut. She looked at Daniel and smiled. "This is too much." "No, my love," he replied. "This is only the beginning. You are a queen. You deserve to live like one." Amara's life changed forever. She traveled to places she had only heard of. She ate food she had never tasted before. She wore clothes she never dreamed she could afford, but through it all, she never forgot Umunne. She built a new house for her mother in the village. She sent money every month to help the poor. She even started a small foundation to help girls in villages get a better life. Chuka, upon hearing the news, was filled with shame. The same girl he treated like nothing had become a woman of honor. People in the village laughed behind his back, but Amara never said a word about him. She had moved on completely. Love had found her in the most unexpected way, through a river, a stranger, and a secret past. And now, in the arms of the man she had once rescued, she lived the life of her dreams. The end.
Please press subscribe button. It help us bring you more interesting stories. Your support keep us going. Please subscribe.